The start of the second session of the 33rd Alaska Legislature is just less than 2 weeks away. I'm joined by Senator Bill Wielechowski from the Senate Majority. He was first elected to the Alaska State Senate in 2006, and he served ever since. He's been a member of the Majority and Minority, and he currently serves as the Rules Chair for the Senate Majority, which means he gets to determine what bills go to the floor and when. It's a nice position. And I'm joined by Representative Julie Coulombe from the House Majority. She was first elected in 2022 to the State House, and she serves as a Majority member of the House Finance Committee. Before we start, I want to thank GCI, our sponsor, for making live streams like this, actually recordings like this, videos like this possible. And I'm very happy to have GCI as a sponsor. Their internet's so fast, we have the internet, and I'm very excited about GCI. So I want to thank GCI again for their sponsorship. First thing I want to talk about is, Bill, it's the second session of the legislature. You were elected in 06, so you've been through a lot of these. It's an election year, which makes it different in a lot of ways. So maybe talk a little bit about how it's different in an election year compared to like last session when it wasn't an election year.
I think second sessions are always much more intense. They're always very quick. There's a lot of moving pieces. People want to get their bills passed. And, it's just a lot more intense.
More pressure maybe on if a bill gets passed or doesn't get passed?
Yeah, because if you don't, the way our session works is it's 2 years, and so if you don't get your bill passed in the second session, then it dies, and you have to start all over again. And so it's hard to pass a bill. I don't think the public appreciates how hard it is to get bills passed. And if you can go through all this work and you can spend all of last year and all of this year, and then if on the last day for some reason it doesn't go through, then your bill dies and you got to start all over from scratch. And so that's why you see some bills like the alcohol tax revision. Mm-hmm. It took a decade to get that passed.
Well, I remember last time there was the election bill that I was on the Senate floor, and you guys were literally scurrying 30 minutes before the timeout at midnight to get something going, and it didn't work. It didn't go. It was almost there. They were writing handwritten amendments.
That's right. If we had another 30 minutes, that would have been passed. It would have been the law probably. I feel pretty confident about that. But it's dead, and it never got any traction after that because you get new players coming in, and you have new different priorities, and so there's a definite emphasis on speed and getting things done in the second session.
Representative Coulombe, this is your first second session. You were elected in 2022, and you went right into being a member of the Majority. So talk a little bit about what your expectations are, because you're going to be Bill's not up for election next time, but you are at the House. Every member's up every 2 years. So maybe talk a little bit about last session and then this dynamic of it's an election year. Yeah,
so the last session, I was actually kind of surprised it moved slow. I was thinking I was going to be moving fast the minute I hit Juneau. It took a while for the wheels to start turning. And then I had subcommittees to run, so that was a new thing for me. So I was consumed with that. And then at the end, I expected more of a crunch than I had, and now everybody's been telling me, this coming up session that it'll be a crunch to get things passed. I did with Senator Kaufman, we got a bill passed around the CDL licensing, which was nice, but I think this year, just from what I can tell, everybody says it's really different. Everybody's running for election, things are moving fast, people want to get out of Juneau, and so I guess we'll see. I think for the Finance Committee, we're going to be busy.
Now, your first session, you're in the Majority and you're on the Finance Committee, which is kind of going in the deep end. I mean, talk a little bit about how that's just, because Bill was on the Finance Committee in the Senate for many years, and they see literally almost everything.
Right.
It's not like a focus like a labor and commerce or
right.
state of, it's a very...
Yeah, so it makes it harder to prepare for, but it gives you so much, like my knowledge, I have opportunity to learn about just about any subject and any bill, anything in the budget gives me an opportunity to learn fast. And so I really liked it for that reason. If I was on a certain committee, I may be really knowledgeable about that one thing, if it's labor and commerce or military veterans affairs or something, but the Finance Committee sees everything. So it's really, I thought it was really important this last session too, because of all the talk about energy and the carbon bills from the governor. We got a lot of great information in the Finance Committee on that, so I felt fortunate.
I want to talk a little bit about the budget and the price of oil. The governor's budget came out last month, and also the fall revenue forecast came out, and it has oil forecast for fiscal year 2025 at 76, and it's been basically in the high 70s, low 80s for the last few months, way below the last 2022. We saw it in the hundreds after the Russia-Ukraine thing. So it's down a bit, but it's right around where the forecast is right now. The current budget projects $1 billion deficit, almost $1 billion deficit, with the full dividend, a $2.3 billion dividend. So I guess, Bill, you've been in there a long time where you've seen surpluses and deficits, and the CBR is a little below $3 billion. So what's that going to be like this session with more pressure on the budget than in past years?
I think it really is going to depend again on the price of oil, and the dividend is again going to be a big topic of discussion. And what are we going to do with education funding? That's a big topic of discussion. If you pay a full dividend, which statutorily would be around $4,000, $3,800, $3,900, somewhere in that range, you have a $1 billion deficit. There are some people who want to do obviously much lower than that. If you think about it, there's 730,000 Alaskans that get a dividend, 700,000 somewhere in that range. So for every that costs about $700 million to get a $1,000 dividend. So you can sort of do the math that way. If you start ratcheting the dividend down $700 million, well, that's more money you have to spend on education and things like that. That's where the debate will be. That's where, once again, that's where the fundamental debate will be. How big do you want that dividend to be?
Now, both caucuses, I'd say, are split on the amount, and the majority, several of them kind of support the full, but then the House majority on the Finance Committee last session went to a 50-50, which was kind of a move we hadn't seen for a while. And then there was kind of some fighting on the floor, and then it went to the Senate, and it ended up we'll talk about that later, that turducken kind of budget. But maybe talk a little bit about, without speaking for the whole majority, but I know there's some split ideas on that. I mean, that must be difficult when it's such a big issue. It's like the issue every year since 2016.
It is a big issue. I think what's tricky about it, and being a new legislator, I'm still trying to manage this, is that it's so split in the public on what we should do. There's so many people that want the full dividend, they don't want any dividend, or in the middle of the road. Like if you look at my emails, I got them all there. And I'm sure a lot of legislators, depending on the area you are in Alaska, has that kind of input. And so I think the legislature just reflects what's happening in the public. And for us, I mean, it's our responsibility to pass a balanced budget, and so that's what we have to do. I don't know what's going to happen with education funding, but we're walking in with $1 billion deficit, which I believe the governor said that it should come out of the CBR, out of savings, and so that's definitely going to be an issue we're going to be wrestling around. For sure.
You have kind of the same dynamics, Bill, and you actually sued when Walker vetoed the dividend. I mean, it was Wielechowski versus Walker. It's that famous lawsuit where they ruled that it's subject to appropriation by the legislature. So you've been the big dividend guy, but then your caucus also, like the House majority, is split. So again, without speaking for your majority, what's that like, having very different, divergent viewpoints on this big issue?
Yeah, it really, the dividend is one of those issues which really cuts across all different lines. It cuts across rural, urban, it cuts across district lines, it cuts across partisan lines, because you have Democrats and Republicans on all sides of this issue. And so it's the same in our caucus. We have people, it's very split. And what you see, I think, a little bit more often than not is people with lower income districts, people in rural districts, their constituents want a bigger dividend. But it's not always like that. And you try to figure out areas where you can agree, and areas where you disagree, you agree to disagree.
Do you think there's some bills right now? The Senate passed a bill on the formula, and it went to the House, and I think in the Ways and Means Committee it got changed a little bit. But there is some bills out there on redoing the formula. Do you think, what are the chances of that happening in an election year session?
Well, the Senate did pass a change to the dividend formula. It was close. It was a close vote.
Very close. I think it was 4-3 in the committee.
On the floor, I think it was maybe by 1 or 2 votes. It was close. I voted against it, but people were all over in our caucus. And so it's in the House now, and I don't know what the House will do with it.
I think the Labor and Commerce, it was a 50-50 deal. It was I think ratcheted up depending on revenues, and then the Labor and Commerce Committee, or the Ways and Means Committee, kind of tinkered with the whole thing, and kind of, now it's in the House Finance Committee actually. So you guys are going to have to look at that bill. And I
One
guess
of the many bills waiting for me.
what are your thoughts about potentially resolving this long-standing issue during an election year session?
Well, my biggest thing is we need to get it resolved. Whatever the resolution is, let's do it, because a lot of the input that I get from constituents is, follow the law. Don't just go around the law. If you want to follow the law, change the law, and get it settled. I have more people saying just we want it settled. more than anything else. So I'm open to looking at it, and whatever options are out there for us to get it settled, so it's not always being wrestled with. I would favor that, because part of it is, I wouldn't say, they always say it takes the air out of the room. That's not my experience in the first session. It wasn't like we were sitting around wrestling around the permanent fund every single day. But everything you talk about, and I don't think constituents know, but you may be talking about education or DOT, or all this is kind of wrapped into, so where's this money coming from, right? So if you're proposing an increase, that's going to affect the permanent fund or the savings. So it's important for us to get it settled.
I know one thing I heard from a lot of people is they've kind of accepted it's not going to be a full dividend probably. Last 2022 last year was pretty big because of the election year, and the price of oil went up with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, so there was extra money. But I think it's been so long since the original veto by Walker in 2016. I think people have kind of accepted it's not going to be the full statutory, but then what's it going to be? Is it going to be the 50-50, which still leaves some other thing is revenues. There's been some talk of revenues. There's been different talks of sales tax, income tax, oil tax, and we haven't seen anything last year. And I would say probably, Bill, it's even less likely something will happen on revenues this year. Would you agree with that?
I think it's. I think we're stalemated to a large degree in the legislature and with the governor. I think I don't see a significant revenue measure passing all three bodies. When I say three bodies, I mean the House, the Senate, and the governor. I don't know that I see that. I think, and for a variety of reasons, I think political reasons, just the composition of the House and the Senate, and where the governor is. The governor said he doesn't support certain revenue measures. I also think there are definitely areas where there are agreement, but I think people are just politically just don't want to take the vote on some of the things. I think there's a lot of people who would vote for an oil tax, for example, if it were on the floor, but it's difficult to get it, to a point where we can vote on it. So I don't see major revenue measures passing this year.
Julie, I want to talk about the House dynamic. Last year, 2022, there was a ton of new people. I think 17 new people elected. Now the majority has one more new person, Tom Baker, who was appointed for the vacant seat, where Josiah Pocketok went to become North Silborough mayor. So I think one of the big dynamics that I was following last year that made kind of the news was there was a lot of new people in the House, whereas the Senate had some new people, but a lot of very experienced people. And there was that really kind of awkward dynamic of this turducken, which is the operating budget with the capital budget with the supplemental budget. And that's what ended up happening at the end. And I know several House members were vocally, publicly mad at the Senate. Do you see that becoming a thing again? I mean, I know you guys are cool, but you guys are cool. But I mean, there's some of your, both sides had gotten kind of on the public pretty vocal about the dynamics.
Well, I think some of that I would attribute to being new and how to handle those situations. But I think what I've tried to do is try to build bridges with people and try to have relationships with people and gain some trust. And I felt that when the Senate did that, I didn't trust what they were doing anymore. I'm not in the room where it happened. The leadership was meeting. I don't know all that happened within that, but I think that was hard for me and a lot of the new legislators to take, because we didn't expect that to happen. And so I think this year for me, it's fresh start and fresh budget, and let's just go forward. And I have said before, it's on me. I need to be sure I'm taking some time to have relationships with senators and talking to the governor. And when I first got down to Juneau, I was so overwhelmed. I was kind of here in my cocoon and trying to do my work. But as Bill said, there's three entities here. We all have to be working together and communicating.
I saw you once at the hangar. I was trying to buy you a drink, and you had this binder, and you're like reading. I said, "What are you reading?" Friday night.
It's Friday night.
You're reading this binder.
Yeah, I was pretty consumed with what I was responsible for doing. But now looking back, I was like, okay, well, I need to have my head up too, and to be talking to, the senators and with the governor, and this is what I see. Is this what you guys see? It's work better together.
What's your take on that, Bill? I know you're in the leadership, and you've been in the minority too, where you've had to deal with kind of things you didn't like. You famously were, I guess it was Senator Stedman, that was 2 years ago, locked the office door during the Senate floor session to get the budget done. This is kind of a legendary thing that and the Senate Finance room later. But speaking from somebody who's been in the minority now in the majority, I mean, I guess can you understand how some of the House members were pretty upset about what happened, kind of the transpired at the end?
Yeah, I think last year was an odd year for a variety of reasons. I think you had a late organization on the House side. You had a lot of new members.
Basically, it was the second day after session started.
Yeah, but it was just slow. It was slow rolling, it seemed, and it's water under the bridge. I mean, I think there was no attempt on the Senate side to try to put anything over. I think there were, you've got some really senior members in the Senate Finance Committee. It's probably the most senior committee chairs maybe ever in the history of the state.
Senator Hoffman's been there since the 80s.
Senator Hoffman, the longest-serving senator, one of the longest-serving legislators in the United States, 30-plus years. You've got Senator Stedman, you've got Senator Olson, senior members who are used to doing things in a certain way. And I think when things weren't done the way that they had done them for many years, it just things got a little bit off the rails. But I think there's absolutely a commitment to work together and want to get along with the House and work with the House and recognize that we have to work together in order to get things done. The people expect that.
I want to talk about school funding. Last year, one of the big focuses was the BSA increase, and then it ended up being a one-time increase, which the governor vetoed half of. Do you see the legislature overriding that veto, or no? I mean, I know it's.
I can't speak for the Senate side, but the House side, I don't see it. I don't see the votes being there, but I don't know. That's just a guess. I know that they did a poll at the beginning of the summer, I think was, and just trying to figure out what we're going to do, and I didn't see much support for it. The main issue for me to do that is, I think that the BSA needs to be dealt with within the formula. This outside funding is really giving school districts this bump here and there. They never know what's coming, and so we're going to fight about another outside the BSA amount when the governor already vetoed it. I would rather just invest time in dealing with
that's what I hear.
Solution.
I'm sure you hear this from schools, and you really can't plan for long term with a 1-year increase. And I think it's obvious that the BSA with inflation, it's really, I mean, if it hasn't gone up with the inflation, it's really a cut. But there's the issue of money and how to pay for that. I mean, do you think there's going to be another one-time increase, or because I know in the past they've looked at the formula, and when they open the formula, I mean, it's a very complicated formula. There's all kinds of accelerators and factors, and I've looked at it and I've tried to understand it, and I mean, it's very, very complex formula.
It is, and I think changing the formula is a multi-year process. I think you're looking at probably 3-4 years if you were to go down that path. And I'm not saying that we don't need to start going down that path or start heading in that direction, but I do think we really can't wait any longer on education funding. I think we're hearing, certainly in Anchorage, we've got, they're looking at about a $90 million shortfall, and every school district in the state will have huge shortfalls if we don't pass something. We had multiple schools here in Anchorage on the chopping block last year. I'm sure we'll see that again. You're going to start to see wholesale program cuts. You're going to see cuts to athletic programs. You're going to see mass teacher layoffs. So I think we really need to do something this year. We passed a bill out of the Senate, increase in the base student allocation. And I think the House will take that up, and hopefully if they disagree, then we can go to conference on that and come up with a solution. But I do think we need to do something on education funding, absolutely, because we're seeing families start to leave the state, and we're seeing, we're seeing businesses starting to really call out and say, look, we can't fill jobs because there are not enough young people who want to stay in the state, and we're seeing kids leave the state, and the vast majority don't come back to Alaska because they don't see opportunity here, they don't see a good education system here. So I think it's really incumbent on us to really tackle this year.
Yeah, I guess I'll go back to you, Representative Coulombe, your thoughts on the formula and then also just the BSA in general and how you think that might go this session.
So,
It's a big one.
It's a big one because
are you the education subcommittee chair?
I am.
You are. So yeah.
Yeah.
So the folks who might not be fully aware, there's this finance committee, but then every department, every agency has a subcommittee that they do a lot of the budget work in first,
Right.
and then they goes up to the committee. So you do
I do the deed
education.
sub. So I do the deed subcommittee, which is strictly the money. That is not really. We don't sit around and talk about the BSA there. We're talking about the operations of deed. So it's the BSA, although it comes up, it's not, it's not something I put a rubber stamp on or whatever. So it's a little bit separate. But it has let me dive into the Department of Education. I've also visited every school in my district, public, private, and I actually have a residential school in District 11 too, and trying to get feedback from principals and teachers, and trying to see what they want, what they need. I'm finding that the fixed costs that they're struggling with is real. The energy costs that they have, the increase in energy costs is real.
Yeah,
Transportation's a big one too, and that's a history to transportation, but like how that's funded now as it opposed to what it used to be, they fall short. So ASD fills that gap in with other monies to try to cover transportation because they had to raise the pay. So there's a lot. What I've found when I'm talking with my colleagues, especially in rural Alaska, their issues are, let's say, the financial status of those school districts are very different than the Anchorage School District. The Anchorage School District right now has over $100 million in savings. They just are about to spend $20 million on a new school. They have about, I think it's about $48 million in vacancies. So there's, you could see it when they came to talk to House Finance. You could see the look of my rural legislators when they were throwing these numbers around, because these other school districts don't have that kind of pocket. They're done. Their savings are done. Like, so there was a couple southeast school districts that they didn't have anything. They didn't even have the savings they were supposed to have to cover emergency costs. So I think what I've tried to do in the interim, I'm trying to balance the two, because I think what the ASD is struggling with is probably different than the rural areas, and there's solutions for both. But obviously I want schools to be better performing schools. I mean, we're in the bottom of the barrel, so whatever it takes, whatever we need to do to improve that, we need to do that.
I guess, Senator Wielechowski, more broadly, you've been around a long time. Does the state maybe take on too much? I mean, there used to be the school bond debt reimbursement. I was shocked to learn that Anchorage actually has less kids now than in the 70s, with more buildings, more square footage. I guess, is there too much the states got involved with over the years where these districts are like, we have to have your money, otherwise we're in trouble?
Well, one of the things, I guess the short answer is costs go up, and you have labor costs that go up, have increased significantly. You've had an inflation rate of 10%, double digits in 1 year, and probably 7 or 8, 9% in the other couple of years. You've got utility costs that are increasing, gas costs that are increasing. So you have fixed costs that are increasing. That's number one. ASD has looked at closing schools. They did close one school last year. They closed a couple other schools on base the year before that. So they are looking at closing schools. And I think the other thing that maybe people aren't looking at is that the state has limited the amount of local contributions that communities can make. And so Anchorage, in a way, is hamstrung. There is a cap at which they can contribute funding. And so you have a lot of parents here in Anchorage who are saying, hey, provide more money, but the local government can't do that. The state actually has to do that. So there's some other things at play here that maybe we're not necessarily being discussed a whole lot.
Well, I agree with you. I mean, I'm much more locally. I'm on my condo board, and our dues 2 years ago were $250, and now they're $325, and we've had to increase them twice, and we didn't want to do that, but to keep our level of service the same, we had to do that, and people didn't like it, some of them, but we had to explain, hey, this is not really, we're not spending more money. We are, but we're doing the money. Everything costs more. So it's. I think some people don't maybe appreciate when the costs go up. You have to raise the revenue just to match where you were. Otherwise, it's effectively a cut, whether it's education or snow plowing or healthcare, whatever those things might be. Next, I want to talk about the pensions. That's a big topic last year, which I think is going to be another big topic this year. Senator Giesel has a bill which returns somewhat to a defined benefit. We used to have people are familiar with the Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, then 2006 that went to a defined contribution. There's been a lot of discussion about snow plowing, for example, and people are incentivized to work for the state maybe as much as they were, but there's also the issue of the cost of the pension. So I guess your first session last year, you came up, this was the first time they really discussed pensions in a big way for quite a few years. I guess what are your thoughts on that and this pension bill?
Well, yeah, so it got some hearings and it was discussed. I'm concerned about it. My biggest concern is it viable long term? Like, is this going to be something the state can actually pay for? I'm concerned about that. I also am concerned that you're putting something together to kind of make people stay in the state. I understand incentivizing people, but you know, if you get this, you're going to stay in the state. I want people to stay here because they want to stay here. But also, and we've talked so much, is that there's the big drain is younger adults, right? That's where we can't, all the workers are leaving and the older workers are here. I'm not getting a sense that younger workers, their big problem is retirement. Like they want good pay and benefits, probably child care benefits, health benefits. That's what they're the most concerned about now. So I'm not sure it's going to pull in the people and keep people here, you know, keep the turnover down as much as has been said. But I'm still listening on the, you know, the meetings, and I'm still researching it. But those are my concerns around it.
Yeah, I guess what are your thoughts, Bill? I know you've worked in labor a long time, and she makes a point. You know, a lot of younger people don't work for 30 years at a job like that used to be the case. You work a job, 30 years, retire, pension. You know, this is a big topic. It's in the Senate. It's probably going to be a big topic this session. What are your thoughts on some kind of form of defined benefit? And I know there's been an option. Part of the bill makes it optional. You can either go into that or you can stay in the old if you want to save your own money and do a 401k style thing. So I guess what are your thoughts on?
Well, based on lots of public testimony that we've heard from police chiefs, fire chiefs, principals at schools, executives within the Dunleavy administration, quite frankly, commissioners, directors, what fundamentally is happening is we are not competitive with California, with Oregon, with Washington, with any other state in the country, because Alaska is the only state in the United States that does not have a defined benefit or a pension and doesn't offer its workers Social Security. So you can work your entire career in the state of Alaska and you have no pension at all. Only state in the country that's like that. To make matters worse, if you actually have Social Security, if you work 10 years and qualify for Social Security, and then you come and work for the state of Alaska or a municipality or borough that is in our retirement system, you actually have your Social Security dropped. Your amount that you get for Social Security is actually diminished merely by the fact that you worked for the state of Alaska, and it can be thousands and thousands of dollars per year. So what we're seeing happening in the testimony that we're hearing from police chiefs, fire chiefs, principals, is that people are coming to Alaska, they're getting trained up, and it costs a lot of money to train a teacher and a firefighter, and then they're leaving.
I know Commissioner Cockrell, the DPS commissioner, said this on the record in the committees. He said people come, they get trained, they do 5 years, and then they go to lower 48. So I mean, he said that. He's the DPS commissioner, the public safety commissioner. So
I mean, we can I guess sit here and theorize and wait for more studies and statistics, but I think the real study is looking what's happening in our state. And what we're seeing is we don't have enough snowplow operators. We don't have enough police officers. We don't have enough firefighters. We don't have enough teachers. People are leaving the state to go somewhere else. And is that related to the defined benefit? I think it is. I think that's one of the considerations, particularly when people are starting a family.
Well,
if they see that they have a much better opportunity somewhere else, I think people are taking that opportunity.
I just came across, I know both of your offices by my Alaska political report. So if you're watching, folks, if you don't get the Alaska political report, please get hold of me and sign up. But we just came across a contract Dittman Research got from the governor. He's a polling firm, Matt Larkin, and they're going to be, I guess, surveying state employees and figuring out kind of what makes them happy and what they want. So that's interesting. What that returns. I mean, I think the pension stuff might be a factor in that.
Yeah, and I don't dispute the fact that we're losing workers. I'm not sure the defined benefits is going to be the thing that brings everybody back. I think there's a lot of issues. Like with school teachers, there's a lot of issues about the workplace, what they're working under, what they're working in. They get burnt out, and it doesn't matter what retirement benefit you gave them, they're leaving because they're miserable. So there's a lot of factors that keep people or increase your turnover.
I know the governor had a bill for a incentive kind of bonus, and actually that happened in Florida. DeSantis did a big. My cousin's a teacher, and she's going to be my principal soon. But that was a big, from what I heard from her, that was a really big deal for Florida teachers. I think it was $10,000. It was a significant, incentive pay or bonus. And I know the governor has a bill on that, but that hasn't gotten a ton of traction yet. But that might come up as another thing this session.
Yeah, I think it will. Yeah, it's important.
Last thing I want to talk about is for us Anchorage folks, a big deal is a Cook Inlet. Bill, you were around during the last round of credits and the Renaissance. You know, like they called it. It cost billions of dollars in credits, but more gas was found. Right now, we're looking at estimates with the utilities, and you know, the gas companies are saying 5 years. We may have to start importing LNG, which to me sounds so crazy. It's like importing New Mexico importing chilies or something, or Hawaii importing pineapples. The governor has a bill. That hasn't introduced yet, but talked about a bill for some royalty relief. I guess my question is, and you've been around for the last round, we've already done that in a sense. We're here again. What's going to happen? Fairbanks started buying gas from the slope, from Hillcorp. They used to buy from Cook Inlet. The other part, Southeast, rural, they don't really benefit from Cook Inlet gas. Anchorage does. Fairbanks, in a sense, could, if the intertie gets upgraded, because Golden Valley buys some wholesale power from Chugach, which are powered by the gas turbines. But I think this is going to be a big issue this session, between Anchorage and the rest of the state, and then also people saying, do we need how much money do we need to spend if this is going to happen every 10 years?
Right. I think energy will be a big issue this session. I think Cook Inlet will be a big issue this session because you're right. What is happening is the gas contracts are starting to drop off. Hillcorp is not extending gas contracts. They haven't extended it to Homer Electric, which will start to drop off gas, lose gas supply in March of this year. Within 3 years, Chugach Electric starts to lose gas, Matanusa Electric starts to lose gas, Golden Valley starts to lose gas within a decade. NSTAR, which provides heat for South Central, starts to lose gas. So yes, this is a crisis. It's going to take probably at least 3 to 5 years if you want to import LNG, which I think is an absolutely ridiculous idea personally. The problem is you have a 100-year supply of natural gas in Cook Inlet, and you have one dominant producer, Hillcorp, that is refusing to drill new wells in Cook Inlet. So I've sent multiple letters to the Attorney General. I know the utilities sent a similar letter to the Attorney General saying, hey, there's actually a consent decree which Hillcorp signed when they assumed 90% of the leasehold space in Cook Inlet. There's a consent decree where they agreed to drill for and explore for new gas. They're not exploring. They haven't explored for any new gas at all.
But on the same side, there's Fury, Hex, that this guy Hendricks bought out of bankruptcy, and then there's Bluecrest. And they're both sitting on, they say, big amounts of gas, but they don't have the money.
Yes.
And I think Hillcorp, I've heard there's been some discussions about working together, and maybe the split isn't right or something, but there is gas, but there's the reality is there's a flat demand. So how much money needs to be what's the return on that? So
I think, like you said, we've spent billions in Cook Inlet trying to incentivize gas, and it works for a short period of time and then it dies off. We currently have royalty relief in Cook Inlet, so if the royalties are too high, a company can come in and apply for royalty relief. I don't think that's the solution. I think the solution needs to be you have ADA come in and basically hire some of the native corporations or some independent contractors go out and drill for gas in Cook Inlet, because what we're doing is not working. What we're doing is not working, right? We're trying to get private industry to do it. Private industry is saying for whatever reason we don't want to do it. It's not profitable enough for us to do it. It's too risky. I think in a situation like that, it is incumbent on us to have ADA, which is perfectly situated to do this, go out and start figuring out a way to get private contractors to go out and drill there.
I mean, I would say the frustrating part for me when I look at our state and what's going on, if you look at Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Norway, Turkmenistan, all these places where they Brunei, like they produce a lot of resources, they take care of their energy needs. They figured out a way to. I mean, obviously some of those are a little bit authoritarian, so it might be a little easier for them to make decisions like that. But even Norway, I mean, these countries with vast amounts of energy, oil and gas, have found a way to meet their energy needs of their where they their countries or their localities. Mm-hmm. What do you think now that this is your second set? It's kind of a new thing for you, but this could be this is going to be a big topic, and it affects 400,000 people and more even in the rail belt.
Oh yeah, more than that, because I mean, energy, you can't get a lot of resource development if you can't provide cheap energy. Like, it's only going to go so much. Your economy is only going to go so high. It's beyond just people paying rates, which is a huge concern. Nobody wants their rates to go up 50%. I don't want to import gas. I think that's ridiculous. But there's a lot of projects and ideas out there, as I've heard you say, with with infrastructure. Let's build something. Let's build something. Let's do something.
We gotta build something.
Like build
Like
a
the gas
bridge.
line, the in-state, if we
Build a
did,
gas line, build a bridge, give me something that says we're taking care of Alaskans, and the pipeline is been around forever. Like we've been talking about that for a
50
long,
years,
long
yeah.
time. I personally like the bullet line, but because I'm looking to just like, what are we going to do within the state to take care of our residents and our economy? It'd be great if we could export gas. It'd be great if we could have these bigger projects, but at this point, I mean, it's still ridiculous that rural Alaska is still on diesel. It's ridiculous what Fairbanks pays. So I'm just looking for something that at least if you can get the rail belt covered, you can start working through renewables and all these other ideas on the rural areas. But we can't even get Cook Inlet gas going for where everybody lives.
you mentioned education, schools, and energy, and if we had a bullet line, one of the biggest drivers right now in schools, especially in places like Fairbanks and interior, is energy cost, gas and electric.
Yep.
So if we could have built this thing 10 or 20 years ago, we'd have. I mean, there's hundreds of years. I don't know how many hundreds of years of gas there is on the North Slope. That would deal. I mean, that would deal with a great part of the population of the state. And then there's money to focus on, whether it's power cost equalization or other incentives for. I mean, Southeast, they're kind of lucky. They have the hydro. Right. They've figured that out a long time ago, and a lot of that was federal money. They built, that. What's a sham? Oh my God, I forget the name of the big dam in Juneau there, but big Senasham, big dam, and they're kind of a closed system. So, is this gas line something that keeps getting talked about? I kind of just block it out because I hear about it. I mean, there was Aegea, and there was Pale, and there was Parnell, there was Walker, there was Murkowski. It's just every time you hear about it, it just feels like it's such a pipe dream. But I think a lot of us could see the benefits of that.
I think the long-term solution in Cook Inlet is ultimately you have to upgrade the grid, and I think we're taking huge steps towards that. We've got the federal funding coming in, $200+ million, which we have to match, which will be a topic of debate. The thing with that is, by getting a redundant line, a second line in, that will enable us to open up all sorts of new renewable opportunities in South Central: wind, possibly hydro, other potential sources, solar. So, but the problem with those, there's two things. Number one, it doesn't take care of your heat situation, and number two, those are intermittent. And so when the wind's blowing, it's great. When it's not, you need some sort of base load there. And so we have to figure out that base load. For years, it's been natural gas, but now that's going away. So, yeah, absolutely. I don't think the line from the North Slope, the gas line, is dead. I think I just got briefed on something a couple weeks ago. There are people that are out there that are still pursuing this because of what the Russian attack on Ukraine. That has really soured Europe to Russian gas. We're seeing a huge amount of interest from Japan. We're seeing huge interest from Korea. So I think there still is potential in the gas line. I don't want to get people's hopes raised too high because, like you said, this has been a 50-year thing that we've been dealing with. But I do think the stars are a little bit closer aligned than they have been in past years.
Well, both of you were just, I think, in North Dakota for energy. Yeah. Before I go into that, I want to ask you. I think you went to Iceland, right, with a group of legislators. Maybe what's some your takeaways on that? I know they have a lot of renewable, and they're, 300,000, 400,000 people. They're a country, but they're pretty small population.
They're a country that's 5-6% the size of Alaska. They have population the size of Anchorage, so about 300,000, 400,000 people in the total country, and yet they are booming. They have companies that are coming to Iceland and are asking to do business, huge companies that want to go there. And the big reason is because they have a stable government, but also because they have low-cost energy. And this is the same thing we saw in North Dakota. Low-cost energy is really the key that's going to open up Alaska to so much opportunity. And so when you look at a country like Iceland, you drive across the country, there's nothing. They have hardly any resources at all. They have no oil, they have no gas. In fact, if you look back 60, 70 years ago, they were like rural Alaska. They were heating on diesel. They had diesel, and they made a huge effort on. It was a whole nationwide effort, and it was not without controversy. They said we're going to hydro, and they went to hydro, and it took decades to do that. They created a unified national grid electrical system, which was critical. They put up. They attracted aluminum smelting companies so that they ship the raw products from Australia. Think about this. They ship the raw products from Australia all the way to Iceland, which is in the middle of the North Atlantic. They smelt it there with dedicated 500-600 megawatt hydro power plants, and then they ship that product to either Europe or North America. Think about all that, and it's still cheaper and cleaner to do that than just about anywhere else in the world. And think about our location. Think about how close we are to
Asia.
To Asia. Think about how close we are to the Western United States.
Well, I think it was pointed out that if you look at the Australia exports a lot of gas to Asia, but they go through China. But you know, the boats, the ships have to go through a pretty kind of unstable area. Yeah. For us, it's bam, straight shot.
And
nothing's there. You know, it's just water.
You know, the big takeaway for me from Iceland was we have so many more resources than they do in Iceland. We have unbelievable wind resources, unbelievable, believe it or not, solar resources, unbelievable hydro resources, unbelievable kinetic water resources, many more resources than they do in Iceland. I think a better location, quite frankly. And why can't we do this? Why can't we figure out how to do this? And so I think you're going to see a big focus on energy legislation this year and trying to figure out how we can spur this sort of development, this sort of renewable energy projects here in Alaska. This is the future of Alaska.
What was did you go to Iceland or no? I don't think you went
I didn't go to Iceland. I went
you
to
in North Dakota. Tell us about that.
I thought that was really fascinating. So we visited a coal plant there that was just on the verge of closing. Someone came and bought it, made it clean, basically. So they put scrubbers on. They dealt with their mercury issues. They do CCUS. They have the mine right there. They have an ethanol plant. I mean, it is a they call it an energy compound. You know, like where everything is very close. The trucks are not even going very far to get the coal. The coal down there, lignite, is dirtier than the coal here in Alaska. They've had to do more to get it clean, but they basically saved the coal plant. It powers half of Minneapolis and most of North Dakota.
Well, we saw, you know, when the price of oil shot up in 2009-10, there was that big North Dakota. I mean, there was massive exploration. There was the fracking, and that's kind of dialed back a bit when the price of oil went back down. But I mean, one of the things that I heard about and talked to people with North Dakota, unlike Alaska, is it's so. I mean, there's roads, Texas, New Mexico. There's like, you pull up, boom. You know, it's on the North Slope where it's very expensive to get to and to operate. You know,
Right.
and there's a limited season to do infrastructure and building.
Right.
But North Dakota, yeah, there's booming for a long
Yeah.
time. It slowed down when the price of oil went down, but.
I mean, it to me, I mean, people write off coal, but we went somewhere that they were making it work. It's providing a lot of cheap energy to a lot of people.
Well, and you know they're turning
And
back
taking
on
care
coal
of the
plants
environment.
they're turning on coal plants in Europe. They're turning back on coal plants because of the
Right.
of the Russia situation and
Well,
Nord
they just
Stream,
got a
and
grant.
all of a sudden they're like
Yeah.
heavily reliant on Russian gas. Okay, we don't have as much Russian gas now. We got to turn the coal back. Nuclear. That's where we got to go. Is nuclear. I'm very big nuclear. France is like 80% nuclear. And
Well, we passed legislation a couple of years ago on nuclear. I think there are some experimental plants or locations that we're looking at throughout Alaska. But I think that's definitely an opportunity. And the microgrid, the micro reactors are, what we're told, very safe. And if you have some sort of horrendous accident and it's not going to contaminate water.
it's like a
something-
Connex, basically.
Yeah, it's a
They
very
aren't
tiny
really-
area.
They aren't quite online yet,
Yeah.
but I think it's pretty close to having these micro reactors.
And you can power Bethel, for example, with a nuclear reactor. I know Senator Hoffman has been you know, big supporter of that. Senator Alston's a big supporter of it for some of his communities. So I think there's definite potential with nuclear as we go forward.
Well, I want to wrap this up. I want to thank both of you for coming and talking and very open discussion about the session and what's going to happen. I guess I'll start with you, Representative Coulombe, kind of your maybe wrap-up thoughts on what you expect to accomplish or what you hope happens here in the next upcoming session, which is less than 2 weeks away.
Yeah, if I walk away with a bet that we moved the needle on energy, I'll feel good about that. That is my number one priority. Whatever I have to do to cooperate with the Senate, with the governor, I want to see the vision start to come together because there's a lot of opportunity, a lot of ideas. So that'll be my focus. And also just getting to know senators better and communicating better with my colleagues.
When are you heading down? Pretty soon?
Next week.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going a little early. Yeah,
Nice.
Next week.
Well, thanks again, Representative Coulombe, for coming here and being
thanks
part
for
of the
letting me
discussion.
be here.
Senator Wielechowski, I'll end with you on kind of your hopes for the session, what you think is going to happen, and what you hope to accomplish.
Well, I would agree. I think energy is going to be a dominant issue this session. I think there's a lot of agreement. I think there are things we'll have to flesh out as we go forward on it. But I think we're an energy producing state, and we have so many incredible resources here. And I think if we can put in some frameworks on grids, and we can put in some frameworks on renewable energy, we really have the potential to tap into that and move Alaska forward. So I think that'll be a big issue. I think education funding is something we really need to take a serious look at. I'm hopeful that we can have some sort of increase there. I'd love to see the defined benefit bill pass. I think that's critical to our future as we go forward. The most important thing, obviously, constitutionally, we have to pass a budget, a balanced budget, and so look forward to working with the House to do that. I think we have a good relationship in general. I think we got along on, it's like the public and the press focus on the things we disagree on, but the reality is we agree on probably 95% of the issues out there. When Willow came up, we quickly moved unanimously to pass that. When there are issues like that, we don't fight. We put the state's interest first and we pass those things. So
Last thing I'll ask, predictions on how many days we're going to be looking at here.
Oh, jeez.
Because it is an election year, so people want to get out. But with the new ranked choice voting, the primary isn't as big of a deal anymore. The primary used to be a big driver to
Right, but
want to go
Bill,
campaign.
know better than I have no idea.
I don't think
guess
I think we're going to
it's the
be
same.
120.
120?
121 is I think what it technically is, but yeah, I don't think we'll go much longer than 121
Yeah,
if
you
we
gotta-
go
Sounds
longer
good.
at all.
Well, it's not going to be 90.
I was going to say, let's follow the law. Let's follow
Okay,
the law.
I would love for it to be 90, but I would say it's probably more in line with 120. Hopefully, no more than 120.
Last year was 121 plus one. There was
Yeah.
a one-day special session, which was pretty lively. So again, I want to thank both of you, Representative Julie Coulombe and Senator Bill Wielechowski, for coming to talk to us about the session. And we'll see you guys. You're going to Juneau pretty soon, I imagine.
I leave, I think, in about a week and a half or so.
Okay. Well, thank you both for coming. And for the folks watching, session starts on January 16th here in less than 2 weeks. And I'll be down there covering the session again on the Landmine and the political report. And we're going to be, I think, seeing a pretty lively session. So I want to, again, thank Representative Julie Coulombe and Senator Bill Wielechowski for coming. And stay tuned for live coverage from Juneau, from the Alaska Landmine. And thank our team for putting together such a great show back here. Really appreciate that. Thanks, guys. See you guys in Juneau.